I will share my story with the Misc. I will try to be as accurate as I can. There will be pain, agony, tears, joy, blood, murder, dead bodies, war, hunger, starvation, fights and more in my life. I am not looking for sympathy or praise. I am working night shift lately, and I will keep you entertained if you care to read. I was born in a small town in Bosnia in July 1981 to my father and mother. I lived a normal life in a small town. My parents worked nearby and took care of me and my siblings. We had a nice house, roof over our head, a nice car and went out as much as we could. Living in a small town meant that I knew everyone there and they all knew who I was and who my parents were. I did not watch much TV since we had about 2 or 3 channels and they hardly ever showed anything for the kids. They would show Tom and Jerry once a night for about 10 minutes or so around 7 p.m. Instead, I spent a lot of time playing with my 2 dogs and friends and neighbors. My neighbor, who was about 3 years older, would always find a reason to beat me up. Whether when we played soccer and I scored, he would find a reason to beat me up. I spent a lot of time going over to my grandfather's house and listening to him tell me about WW2, the Germans, partisans, Chetniks, Ustas, and how he survived through the war as a child. I was always intrigued by his stories and even the story he told me over and over about the American bomber that crash-landed in the big field about half a kilometer from my home in 1944. Little did I know that in 1992 I would live a life of war and go what my grandfather went through. I started going to first grade in 1988 when I was about 7 years old or so. I remember the first day of school and my mother spilling water after me on the front porch for good luck, or I guess to be a good student. I was always a good student, got good grades and never studied hard. The teacher used to beat us when we did not memorize songs or chapters from books. I remember one time I was running around the teacher's car. It was a Zastava, mind you, a brand new one. Today when we look at the Zastava, it's utter trash, but back in 1988 in former Yugoslavia, that was a great car. I was first grade and was running around with a friend, playing tag, when I slammed into the mirror of the car and it broke off. I hit it with my head. The other kids ran immediately to the teacher and told on us. He came out, picked me up by my ears, put me down, and slapped me across my face. His face was all red, and he was very mad, slapped my friend too across the forehead, and he fell on his ass. He never told my parents or anyone. Next day his car was fixed. I always feared that man. I feared him more than God or my parents. My mom used to come to the meetings with the teacher and tell him, "Please sir, if he is no good, not a good student, does not get all his beat him." One day I was leaving for school in the morning and I had a small cat. Before I walked out the door I saw that he had a little mouse in his mouth. I figured good cat. But then I saw the little rat's tail move. I walked over to the cat, took the little rat, and put it in my pocket. I brought the rat with me to school. Showed it to the girls, they all screamed and ran. Again, they told the teacher. We got into class, I was ready, and knew I was in trouble. As he walked in, we all stood up as usual, silence, like little soldiers. He said, "Good morning, sit down now." We all sat down. He looks up and says, "Where is the mouse hunter?" No one says anything. He points at me, says, "Come here." I walked up to him, he slaps once, then twice across the face. Then he says, "Where is the mouse?" I said, "I let him go over by the pond." He asks, "Did you kill him?" I say, "No, I let him go." He says, "Good boy, go sit down." I remember to this day the girl that told on me. It was this little teacher's pet. I don't remember her name, but she was a year younger and was very pretty and popular. I hated that girl. During recess, even in first grade, we would have fights, just a boys' fight to see who is strongest. The 2 teachers and the janitor of the school would go outside, sit on the bench, pick out their favorite boys, and made us fight. Most fights I won. I think I won almost all of them in my class. We would fight until one started crying or bleeding, or the teacher said stop. Most recess days were spent playing soccer outside on the gravel or fighting amongst each other. Some days, even when the teachers and janitor were not outside, we would fight just to fight. It was in our blood now. There was one kid, about a year younger than me, but bigger and stronger. I had to rely on technique to beat him. I beat him as many times as he beat me. His name was Dennis. His mother killed her husband, their father, with an axe. He was abusive, had 9 children, would drink, come home and beat her every night and the kids. He would throw her out the second-story window with the kids sometimes. One night she decided to kill him, took an axe, and hit him while he was passed out from alcohol. She hit him with the blunt part of the axe on the head. He jumped up, grabbed her by the throat and started choking her. Her older son grabbed the axe, used the sharp end, and hit him on the back of the head. They dragged the body down the road about a quarter mile after midnight so no one could see. Tried to make it look like a robbery. Inspectors said this man was killed at home. The dead guy's dog was there and buried the dead guy's head with his paws with dirt. This means the dog followed the body from the house. Dennis's mom was found guilty and sent to jail. She spent a few months there and came back. The state did not want to feed 9 children. My uncle had a nice dog, a poodle I would say, very playful and very viscous too. It would hunt rats in the house. I remember sleeping one night on the couch in the living room and felt something crawling on me. Then I opened my eyes, looked on the top of the couch. In the moonlight through the window I saw the rat. It was huge, just walking across the couch. I don't remember what happened next. I think I went back to sleep, but that is an image that is in my head to this day. My uncle would bring that poodle to the house. The poodle would find the rats and catch them, just like a cat. There was a river close to my house, about half a mile away, a nice clean beautiful river. During the summer we would go there and swim and play in the water all the time. The poodle was funny as when dipped in water and taken out, it was not able to see from all the hair, so even when out of the water in my uncle's hands, it was still paddling with its feet in the air. That to me was the funniest ever. My father taught me how to swim in the river. He worked out of the country and I was about 9 when he came one summer and asked, "Did you learn how to swim yet?" I said no, but I can dive where I want to go. He picked me up and threw me off the ledge. The drop was about 12 feet or so, the depth was about 10 feet. I dove back to the shallow end and got out. My father said, "Okay, but you have to learn to swim." I think that summer I learned how to swim. One summer day a neighbor from the upper part of the town was walking with his friends by my uncle's house. He was about 15 or so and his friends. I think I was 10 or so. He also had a similar dog to my uncle's. The friends said, "Let's see the dogs fight." They told me, "Let the poodle out and let's see the dogs fight." The owner of the dog said no, don't do it, but his friends kept saying do it. I did. My uncle's dog jumped on the other dog and mauled it. The other dog ran. My uncle's dog ran after him, caught him and mauled him some more. Blood was everywhere. I did not think much of it until next week as I'm walking home from school. The boys pointed to me, and out of the bush this 15-year-old boy came out with gloves on. He ran up to me, punched me in the face, and down I went. I tried to turn around, cover up and get up, but before I got up he kicked me in the head. Then I went into fetal position and covered my face while he kicked me, spit on me and cursed me. His friends joined in. After a few minutes I got up, dusted myself off and went home, but made a mental note that when I grow up I am going to kill him. Between 88 and 92 I went to school, started smoking with my friends, found weed leaves and chewed on them, went to the river, swam in the summers, played soccer, got into fights with friends. Got picked on by my older neighbor and beat all time. During the holidays we would steal a case of beer and drink it midday, then the heat would hit us and we would end up throwing up. Imagine seeing a couple 10-year-olds sitting on the curb with a case of beer next to them, throwing up. That was me and my cousin. In America you would never see that, but to us that was life, no care, no one cared. One day I had a big dog that was about the size of an American mutt. The neighbor had a small dog, looked like a terrier, always barked at everyone, and was a shitty little dog, just like my neighbor. His dog used to always chase my big dog and bite on him. The neighbor always made fun of me and my dog. One day his little dog chased my dog into my dog's dog house. Then you heard one yelp and my dog walking out with the little dog in his jaws with blood coming from the little dog killed the neighbor's dog, and I knew I had it coming this time. My father was a welder and there was always metal in the garage. I put a metal pipe in my backpack as I knew that jerk would come beat me up for my dog killing his dog. I put the pipe, so one end is sticking out of my backpack, and put the backpack on my back. As I was getting near the house, he is walking down the street with his friends smiling and hitting his fist into his other arm. About 2 feet in front of me as he stuck his hands out to get me, I did the He-Man pulling out sword from the back and hit him across the forehead. Blood started coming down his face and he fell backwards as his eyes rolled up in his head. I ran home, which was about a block away, with the bloody pipe. His father came to talk to my father. My father said, "Your prick son always beat my son," and I never said anything because they are children and we are neighbors. And now you come to me, leave now or you will be bleeding worse than your son. That was the end of that. That kid never touched me again. I will update more as I have time and can remember events. I used to spend a lot of time with my grandfather. He would tell me stories how hard life was during WW2 and years after. His father was killed in WW2, possibly by the Serbs or the Germans. He was not sure, but he was born in 1932, and he remembered the war and all the ethnic and religions war that engulfed the country due to the Nazi invasion. When the Nazis invaded, the Croats, Serbs and Bosnians went at each other's throats. There was a woman, a Serb woman, living not too far from my home. She would walk by my grandfather's house and he would tell me, "Look at her." I remember to this day when her and her mother strung up Fadl's father up against a tree and cut his throat. They killed him, and look at her walking around now, she is almost dead. She would walk through my parents' garden and I would throw rocks at her, but she would say things like, "You little Turk, I will kill you." I did not know why she would call me a Turk. But later I learned in school about the Ottoman Turks and their conquest of Bosnia and Serbia and how the Serbs were treated. That is why she called me a Turk mother effer. My grandfather used to tell me, "Never trust a Serb, never trust a Serb." They killed my cousin after the war. My cousin was a great man, a huge man. His shoulders were massive, his hands and chest. He could easily carry 2 men on his shoulders. It took 2 Serbs with axes to kill him. And these Serbs were his friends. They got him drunk, caught him at night and hit him in the back as he was going home. They killed him. This was my grandfather's uncle. This guy intrigued me because he was so big and muscular. I later asked my father, and my father confirmed that this guy was a very big, muscular and strong man. But the reason the Serb killed him is because he was sleeping with the Serb's wife. Axe to the back of the head. The Serb served 9 years. The stories of killing and revenge were everywhere. My uncle's brother-in-law killed a Serb on a bus. Serb said something wrong to him. This guy was sitting behind him, took out a blade and slit his throat. This man served some time too, about 9 years or so. I remember when he came back and first time I saw him. I was terrified of this killer. He was bald, had earrings and tattoos all over. Looked like a bull to me. I grew up listening to war stories and people being killed. By this time in 1992 the former Yugoslavia was breaking up. Slovenia got independence after a small war. Croatia had a war and got its independence. We sat in Bosnia and watched on TV as the war in Croatia began and the Serbs slaughtered the people of Vukovar. In Bosnia talk of independence was already brewing, but Bosnia consisted of all 3 ethnicities, Bosnian Muslims, Serbs and Croats, or Muslims, Christians and Catholics. Everyone knew this was going to get bloody. People started selling their livestock to buy weapons. First time I saw an AK-47 my dad brought one home, then there were more and more, snipers rifles, RPGs, handguns, bombs, axe and all kinds of stuff. I used to go across Serb checkpoints with my dad to bring in weapons, while our people were getting killed, slaughtered civilians, me and my father were bringing in weapons to protect ourselves. It was all in vain though. The Serbs had an arsenal of weapons that at one time was the 4th strongest nation in Europe. The Bosnian people had nothing. Serbs systematically started cleaning out towns, killing, raping, pillaging and removing the Catholics and Muslims. Again, all sides did this, Serbs did the majority, no Serb hate here, just those that killed the innocent, from any side. The city center, police station, radio and everything was taken by the Serb army. On radio we would hear how the Muslims killed Serbs and the Catholics killed Serbs. We were surrounded by Serb army and paramilitary units called the Chetniks. These guys came in to take care of the civilians once the army left. These were the really bad guys. Rape and massacre was their specialty, it's what they enjoyed doing. My mother's village was about 5 miles away from the town where we lived now. Her family lived in that small town. We thought if we went up there and lived there, since there was no Serbs nearby, we would be safe. During '92 I did not spend much time playing with friends, as many already fled with their families. My father and mother could not leave as their job, which was now Serb occupied and Serb controlled, could not let them go. The Serbs said we cannot leave. I spent a lot of time listening to the radio, walking around with my 2 dogs. Watching our 1 cow that we had, I would take the cow to graze in the fields for almost all day long. I almost died because of that damn cow. I did not know that the cow was thirsty and it would run for miles to get to the water. I would catch up with her and chase her back, she would run again. I would chase her all day. One day she swam across the river. I tried to follow her and the current was too strong. I knew I was in trouble, was not able to swim back to the shallow end as I fought the current, and to stay afloat I felt myself sinking. I knew I was going to drown. There was no one around. No one to see me drown. I would wash down the river, maybe never be found again. As I started to black out and see stars, I felt a hand grab me by my hair. It was a young man named Iders. He pulled me out and said, "I was fishing over there in the bushes and saw that you were in trouble." He saved my life that day. I stopped going to school. Serb children of the town continued to go to school. One day, a Serb classmate I used to beat up on all the time saw me at the river. Him and some older guys saw me there alone. I had a feeling that if they wanted to, they could kill me. No one would care, no one would be responsible. There was no law. They were the law, they did what they wanted to. He came down to me, grabbed my fishing pole, and threw it in the water. It floated down river. He asked, "Who is the law now, Serbs?" I said, "Yes, Serbs." He said, "You know me, and my friends can kill you now. No one can do anything. We are the law." I did not say anything. I stood there and looked at the 4 of them. He said, "I will see you later, just remember who the law is now." My father had a good friend, a Serb. He would bring my father alcohol and cigarettes, told him not to worry, that we will be fine. I felt hopeless. I watched my father sit in silence at night, smoke and listen to the radio for hours. Our small town was still not occupied by Serbs, but we were surrounded. We all had weapons, but compared to the Serb arsenal it was nothing. At night my father would go out and walk around with other neighbors on patrol. I always watched him leave, and I was scared I would never see him again. Every night he left I looked at it as it was his last time that I would see him, night after night. My father's Serb friend had a son, about 17, and by this time I was 11. He would pick me up on his motorcycle, and this is when I fell in love with motorcycles. We would ride to the Serb town, where I would eat at his house and just hang out. One day he rode to his friend's house with me. There was about 10 or so Serb teenagers. We got off the bike and one of them said, "I am going to war. I just got my papers. I'm 18. I'm going to kill me some Turks." He asked what my name is. I told him my name. He said, "Are you a Turk?" I said no. He said, "Liar." I said, "I swear on the Quran." He slapped me on the head, said, "Fuck you and your Quran." The guy I rode there with, my Serb friend, said, "He is just a kid, let him go, man." Last entry for the day. During this whole time, Muslim men and Catholic men were being rounded up and they were disappearing. Some were found dead, some were in the local prison. My father's boss and relative was in the prison. My mother used to go there to give him food. She would see him always beat up and he was malnourished. She would tell me and would say she hopes they never come for our father. One day these Serbs came. They were from the military police, at least they wore the uniform of military police. They took all the computers, cameras and other valuables from the firm where my father worked. They said they all confiscated it for military use. A few days later a general came there. A Serb general, and asked my father where the stuff is. My father said, "You guys took it," he said to us. He said, "The Serb military police, I was in the attic of the big hangar all this took place." The general took out a knife, put it to my father's throat and said, "What was his name?" "The name of the guy that took it." My father knew the name, knew the guy personally, but he did not say anything. My father said, "I do not know, they were military police, that is all I know." I saw all this and thought I will never see my father again. I swore if they kill my father that I will kill him sooner or later. He let my father go, and I never spoke to my father until years later that I saw that. By this time we decided to go to my mother's town and live up there while my father stayed home and worked. We went away and were there for about a week. Then we heard that the Serbs will be coming there first to attack and clear everyone out. We went back to our own town and went back to live in our house. Food was running low, there was no money, no place to travel, no way to find food. I remember going to some Serb neighbors once a week to get some flour so my mom could bake us some bread. My father put the flour there just in case something happened to him. The Serb neighbors would take care of us if they could. There was some flour, but no oil, no salt or sugar anymore. No cigarettes and no alcohol either. My dogs both now got really skinny, there was no more food. One day the Serb army came into the town and on loudspeakers and radio said, "Anyone that has a weapon needs to bring it to them and turn it in. They will not be touched. Once the Serbs come here again and search the homes, anyone with a weapon will be killed." So people started turning in their weapons. Now we were going to be surrounded with no weapons or food. This is it for today, we'll write more tomorrow. It was now I think May of '92. We came back to my town from my mother's parents' town. It was about a week later that the Serbs attacked my mother's parents' village town. My uncle, the one with the poodle who is my father's younger brother, was there when the Serbs went in and started clearing the village from Muslims. They came in uniforms and in trucks. Armed and ready, a unit of Chetniks came with them as well, and when the Chetniks roll in, bloodshed follows. My uncle was in the village because we have some family there. The Serbs came in to clear the village. When they entered the center and started walking up the street, one of the Muslims there had an AK-47 in one hand and a Quran in the other. He ended up killing a young Serb soldier whom was about 19. The young Serb was from my town, and I knew his father as they lived in the same town as me, and they were always nice. The shooting of this young soldier started bloodshed like no one has ever seen there. The Chetniks started rounding up people. Men and boys were separated from the women. The women were told to walk to another village or two anywhere, but not to stay there. The Serbs lined the men up and the boys. Anyone that was 15 to about 60 or so was in one line, males only. The women walked by the line of their husbands and sons, that is the last time they would see them. This happened on the bridge over the river, where we used to swim. The Serbs had a Muslim man with them, a young boy. They made him tell who had guns and who did not have guns. This boy stood there and pointed at people. He probably had no idea who had guns or not. The ones he pointed at were immediately killed on the bridge and thrown in the river off the bridge. Their throats were slit by the Chetniks and they were thrown off the bridge. My grandfather was in that line. When his turn came to face the boys said, no, he did not have a gun. The Serbs let him go. My grandfather walked to another village a few miles away, where they had some relatives. My uncle was at my grandparents' house when the Serbs attacked the village and started shelling the village. He ran for his life. He said he would hear the mortar coming in, and he would try to decide to run left or right. He said one was really close, where he darted left. The mortar hit about 20 meters away from him. He said if he would have went right, it would have hit him right on his back and blown him to pieces. He ran away from the village, came home and was white as a wall when I saw him. He came in the house, sat down on the sofa, and started crying. My mother asked about her parents. He said he doesn't know. On the way back running back to our town, the Serbs stopped him. On the checkpoint was one of my uncle's Serb friends. He told my uncle, You are lucky to be alive, go home and never come back this way, they will kill you. My grandparents made it to a nearby town safe. Many people from the village did not make it, especially men and boys. My mother's cousin was killed by my neighbor Serb. They were friends and used to work at the same bar. My mother's cousin was wealthy. When the Serb asked for money, he said he did not have any, he shot him on the spot. This my father found out from my father's Serb friend and neighbor. He said, I can't believe that he killed your wife's cousin, such a horrible man, they were friends. One house that was nearby to my grandparents' house, this man always hated Serbs, was a wealthy man, and always fought with Serbs. His sons and their wives and families were all hiding from the shells inside the basement of their home. About 23 or so family members. The Serbs came in there and threw hand grenades. Everyone died except an 18-month-old baby. The baby was found by my grandmother a few hours later under her mother. My grandmother was in shock for months after witnessing that bloodbath. I remember that summer going swimming in the river, even though my father told me not to go. I remember one day diving, and as I opened my eyes, there was a decomposing body of a young man in the water. His eyes were all eaten up. As I opened my eyes in the water, that body was about 2 feet in front of me. I never went to swim again. I never told my father or anyone, because he told me not to go there and would have beat the crap out of me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe.